Hello and welcome to the Mighty Oaks Show. My name is Jeremy Stolliker. I'm the Executive Director of the Mighty Oaks Foundation. Glad to have you with us today, and glad to have our special guest, Jeremy Harold. Jeremy is with us, and Jeremy, among other things, is a Mighty Oaks graduate, which is awesome. But he does a lot of stuff with veterans we're going to talk about today. But before we jump into that, if you are watching on YouTube, you're watching the Mighty Oaks Show on YouTube, and you have not yet subscribed, please hit subscribe. You can also hit that notification bell. That lets you know when more episodes come online. And I say this every week, but we've got tons of content on our channel, not just our show, but a lot of other things as well. And love to invite you to watch that. So go ahead and subscribe. If you're listening on Mojo or you're listening to one of the podcasts, go ahead and jump over to YouTube and hit the notification bell and subscribe. And that lets you know, again, when all this stuff comes online. And would love to include you in that. Jeremy, good to have you. Thank you for taking some time. You're in Kentucky, so on a different time, in a different time zone, in a different state. No one really knows where Kentucky is, but you're out there. And it's awesome to have you, man. Thanks for coming on.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I enjoy it. Appreciate it.
Awesome. Jeremy, as I mentioned, is a graduate of one of our programs, and that's how we connected maybe, 2 years ago, something like that. So a little while ago. But Jeremy is a United States Army veteran and has an organization called the Veterans Club based out of Kentucky, and works with veterans there, and also does equine therapy, has some of his own horses, and man, they do a lot of work for veterans, just kind of leaning into it. It's crazy because one of the things we talk about all of the time is purpose and direction, and so much of what we deal with in our past, and whether it's trauma or relationship issues or whatever it is, when we focus on a purpose, we begin moving forward, and those things don't have a control over us anymore. And Jeremy has really taken his past and his experiences and channeled that into helping others and paying it forward. And stoked to hear about all that's going on there. Jeremy, tell us your story, some combat, where you came from. I know you were in Iraq, I believe, right?
Yes.
For a long time, a long time. And the Army doesn't do short deployments, so you were there for a long time. Came home, dealt with some things, and ended up looking around you and saying, somebody needs to help our brothers and sisters. So tell us that story a little bit, if you wouldn't mind.
Yeah, so I deployed to, I'm an Army veteran, deployed to Iraq in 2003, 2004 during the initial invasion. Spent 15 months over there. It's what I thought was going to be a 6-month deployment. Extended a few times. It seemed to be the trend. Got through that deployment, came home, tried to get right back to life. And although I thought from my own perspective that what that looked like is what I was doing, I learned from those around me and the folks that love me, and even employers, that wasn't the case. Yeah. And then I started to realize that some of the behavior that I was expressing and putting out was not who I was. And so it took a Marine veteran that I worked.
It's Marine, man. It's always Marine.
Yeah, I worked. So he was my boss. He was tough. He was a tough guy. He called me in one day, and after I'd worked for him, I think it was 6 months. At this time, I was an operations manager at Nestle Foods. Actually, it's the plant where they make all the Hot Pockets, just in case anybody's curious to know. But he pulled me in and he started talking about my cognitive processing and talking about how my supervisors and employees felt like I wasn't approachable, and some performance issues, and a lot of that was due because I wasn't sleeping. I didn't get very good sleep. I was dealing with dreams. I was dealing with just anxiety and stress. Before my feet ever hit the ground in the morning, I was just already out of my element. And so he was one of the few people who actually stood up and said, hey, I'm going to let you know what's going on, and I think you need to get help. And so we had that conversation, and a couple of weeks went on, and we had another conversation, and ultimately I lost my job because of performance issues, right? And so when that happened, I was like, what in the world? Like, this is my livelihood and that kind of thing. And what was a tough situation then turned out to be a blessing later on, because I think that he knew that I wouldn't go seek help if he didn't do that, right? Because I would have just continued to work and avoided and just, kept driving on, right? That's what we're trained to do. And so anyway, went to the VA and got put through a series of tests. I mean, I felt like a guinea pig in a cage, to be honest with you. And they started throwing all these diagnoses and all these brain injuries, all this stuff at me. And I'm like, where in the world is this coming from, right? And so for the next 5 years, I went into a pretty dark depression, not having a purpose, They said I couldn't work anymore. They told me a lot about what I couldn't do anymore. And that was hard because I was always an ambitious guy. I was successful in the Army. I was successful in the corporate world. And all of a sudden now that was stripped. And the difference is my identity at that point was being a soldier, but also, being a corporate guy who felt like he was on the right track. Of course now my identity is in Christ, and nothing can take that away from me. And so that's good. But just educated myself as much as I could on PTS and what that looked like, and just really started to take control and say, hey, listen, I can sit here and become a victim all I want to, or I can take these experiences and use the time that I've been given to go and help and serve others. And ultimately that's how it went. And so I had an idea on a napkin to get 12, 13 veterans together once a month and just hang out and just share that camaraderie. And my wife, so thankful for her. She grew up around horses, and I never did prior to 2.5 years ago. I never touched a horse, was within 100 feet. And I know that's crazy. I'm in Kentucky, but I lived in the city in Kentucky. And so she asked me to sign up for this program out in Kansas. Happy wife, happy life. So I signed up, and I was hoping, honestly, that I wouldn't get chosen to go. And I did, though. And so I went, and I just remember it was amazing. The experience was amazing in a lot of different ways. Just being around those animals and having that positive distraction and just kind of learning something different, something new. And I kind of felt like a purpose leading these big 1,200-pound animals. So we got past that and went out to New York at this other program, and then was called back by War Horses for Veterans in Kansas to do the Megyn Kelly show. And I was like, are you kidding me? I don't know anything. First of all, I didn't know who Megyn Kelly was.
Right.
I don't watch the news. I've been taught not to, right? And then the other part of that was, I don't know anything about horses. Why are you calling me? And he just said, I could just tell how it affected you and want you to come talk about that. So while I was doing that, Patrick, who's now my friend, he mentioned that I would be doing this in my home state of Kentucky. So we laughed it off. It wasn't live. No worries, right? Well, she did in fact air that when the story aired on today's show that I would be doing that. So it was the push I needed. I think it was divine intervention. I think it was just my prayers kind of coming to fruition. And so that's what got us started in the Veterans Club.
Yeah. There's a lot there. So I took a bunch of notes while you were talking, and if you can go back and talk about a few of these things, our audience are folks who have served, people who have served, who are serving, and then friends and family and others who are just interested. You talked about some of the things that you dealt with, and eventually your employer had to let you go because of it. And I think so many people feel like they're alone in what they're feeling, what they're thinking about, what they're experiencing, some of the relationship stuff. Can you talk a little bit more about what it is? You had a hard time, you're making some bad decisions or whatever. What did that look like for you in your life, that eventually led to you getting let go from a job that you cared about?
Yeah, so that was a lot of anger, a lot of resentment. I lost time with my daughter when I deployed was 1 year old. And of course I was gone for 15 months. And so I missed a lot of her first significant events in her life, and just felt guilty about being a father and being gone. And then, dealing with loss in the desert, and then working at an enemy prisoner of war camp in Abu Ghraib, and just seeing that negativity day in and day out, and just really not getting a break from it. Because essentially when you work in a prison, you're essentially in prison. And that's kind of what it felt like.
Right.
Yeah. And so, getting home, I was a little bit entitled, to be honest. So I felt like everybody should listen to me, because I felt like, hey, I went and suffered through all this. And so you need to listen to me kind of mentality. And obviously that doesn't serve us here. And ultimately led to a couple of divorces in my life. And I couldn't put anything together relationally. There was just so much anger that I couldn't even process normal day-to-day stressors in a way that was productive. And so that led me down a road of just nobody wanting to be a part of that, nobody wanting to associate with me in that way, and just how different I was and all these things, because I wasn't that guy prior to. And so nobody understood it, not even family. And I took that into the workplace. Somebody would complain about, something or other, and I, what's that in reality of what? I mean, that ain't nothing, right? Like, suck it up, drive on, like that mentality, right? Like, you'll be okay. And I didn't lead from the heart. I was leading out of kind of like we led in combat, and it doesn't translate well in the civilian workforce. And so that's kind of led me to that.
That entitlement attitude you talk about, I don't think that's something we talk enough about in the veteran community. So many veterans are really using their service, what they did, what they saw, what they experienced, as a reason to behave badly.
Yeah.
It really is an entitlement, right? It's, well, I'm entitled to act this way or to treat you this way because of what I've done.
Absolutely.
That leads to the next thing, which is not taking responsibility for the bad stuff you do or the dumb decisions you make or the things you say to people, the way you hurt people. Man, that's so damaging when we don't get past that.
Yeah, and it was always someone else's fault, right? It was always, I have the answers. You and I had a saying, you get on the train or you get off. That's kind of that was my mentality at the time. And really, I wasn't angry at the people who were in my life. It was just a lot of anger from the experiences, just a lot of the loss and a lot of the injustices that you see for that long in a wartime environment. And I just didn't know how to express that. And obviously when somebody mentioned, hey, get help, I'm like, no, we don't do that. Like, we don't go get help. I'm good. This is my new normal. This is how it's going. And so, hindsight's 20/20, obviously, but yeah, I can understand why people didn't want to associate with that, and it all makes sense now. And so I've been able to wrong some rights and go through some forgiveness with some good people. And so a lot of that's in the past, but it was difficult because I did think, hey, listen, you owe me, and I'm not. I think I need to say it. I'm not proud of that, but it's real. And you're right. Nobody wants to talk about that, but a lot of us go through that. And it just needs to be said that we decided to serve. And the reality is I served to defend this country and those in it and not to be a tyrant. Right. So,
yeah. Yeah. So then you had another veteran confront you on that, happened to be your boss, but again, so important because when we feel entitled and we don't feel like it's our responsibility or we did something special, we're not that interested in listening to people that didn't serve the way we do or did, right? But your boss came to you, but you said it was 5 years after that conversation before you really started to get help?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Why did it take 5 years?
Because I wasn't listening to anyone. I wasn't seeking wise counsel. I wasn't it was either you take me as I am or you get away. I had this ability to make myself numb because that's often what we have to do, right, in combat to survive. And I was living like I was still trying to survive, and it wasn't, like I said, it wasn't necessary here, but my mind wouldn't switch off. And for me, it was normal. For everybody else, it was it was terrifying for some of them, depending on who we're talking about. But yeah, I mean, we just had to, I just didn't want to hear nothing. I didn't want to hear that something was wrong with me. And also it was, I was still in. So that's it was considered a career killer there to go and mention any of these things. And so I was scared of that as well.
Yeah. So you had that conversation, which probably began the process of you eventually getting help. But what was the catalyst for you to finally say, I really do have a problem and I need to get some help?
The catalyst was 3 divorces.
Yeah.
3 divorces, and I wasn't married in those 3 marriages for 3 years, right? And my family, they were not wanting to be around me. My own mother was not wanting to be around me, and the relationship with my daughter. I was trying to keep myself away from her because I didn't want her to be like me. And then when I started to think about that and go, wait a minute, like I should do what it takes in my life to make her want to be like me, right? Like, this is all wrong. I don't avoid her for that. Like, this isn't her issue. This is mine. And I really started to take responsibility to try to turn that around at that time.
Yeah. Yeah, that's huge. You talked about identity, and I think that's a big part of it too. And identifying with the uniform, identifying with the job, identifying with even your past and what you've been through and what you've experienced, and getting a hold of the truth that your identity is not in that. How important was that to you? And I don't know if you could talk through that process a little bit, but you know this, but for those that are, maybe watching and don't know this, so much of what we deal with as an organization really isn't combat trauma. It's a loss of identity. It's someone who's transitioning from the military or combat where they understood how things worked to civilian world where we don't really understand how things work, and my identity is back there, and I'm trying to fit that in over here. Can you talk about your identity for a little bit? This is something I try to jump up and down on every chance I get because it's just that important. But understanding who you really are is so important.
Yeah, my identity, I felt like I was a good soldier. I promoted quick and all that kind of thing. And when that got taken from me, essentially the best thing in my life was stripped, and I was nothing, right? I felt like I was a failure at everything else because I knew that if I did fail at everything, I was going to be a good soldier, and that was okay with me, right? And once they told me that, Jeremy, hey, we're going to have to retire you. Man, that was like a punch to the gut, and I couldn't recover from that. And as much as, people around me were trying to tell me, hey, this is just a new chapter. This is just a new opportunity. And now I believe that and know that's true. But at the time I'm like, I don't want to hear that. Like, this is what I know since high school.
Yeah.
Like that was it. Like, this is what I'm good at,
yeah.
And then I've in other venues I've talked about, I was now at home with my, children. And essentially I went from serving my country to now I'm at home, like a stay-at-home dad, changing diapers all day and that kind of thing. And I was angry about that. I didn't realize how honorable that was, but I just kept saying, you go from serving in the greatest army in the world.
Right.
And now you're sitting here doing what anybody could do. And that was the thing. I was like, not everybody could do what I did in the military, but anybody can be here and take care of kids, right? And so, but I didn't realize for a while how awesome of an opportunity that was in the relationship that we built with my kids because of that. But you're right. I was just a soldier. That's all I knew, and that's all I wanted to do. And nothing made me feel that same sense of purpose.
Yeah. You said you found your identity in Christ. What does that mean to you?
Yeah, well, so a lot of that happened at Mighty Oaks when I went through the program. I got baptized initially in boot camp, and if I'm honest, I got baptized in boot camp because it was Sunday and I didn't want to clean the barracks. Hey, I'm all about transparency and honesty, and that was the honest answer.
For a lot of people, I think.
Yeah, and so I realized that life was bigger than me. Life is bigger than me, and the things that I've been through and experienced can be used for good if I ask for that guidance, if I ask for that mission and that purpose with Christ. And I ran from him for a long time. I mean, it wasn't – I knew that going through all these struggles that people were hinting around that, and my family didn't – we didn't go to church, unfortunately. But other people in my life was like, hey, maybe, you need to pray about what's your next – I knew I needed to, but I didn't want to be accountable. I mean, that's just the truth. I was like, well, if I pretend that I don't believe in this, then I don't have to be accountable. But going through, even before going through Mighty Oaks, I was getting back in the faith, and I was surrounding myself by people who could counsel me and that I could learn from, and really, really trying to find a good mentor. And then going through the program, it just changed my perspective on Christianity as a whole, because and as a team leader now at Mighty Oaks, it really helps me work with these veterans, because I know exactly where they stand when they show up the first day, and kind of what they're going through. And it helps me, lean in and say, look, let me tell you my story. And, at Mighty Oaks as team leaders, we always are talking about our testimonies and using that as a tool to break that barrier. But yeah, I mean, so I learned a lot about what marriage really looked like. I learned what brotherhood really looked like, and character, and all these great classes that we have there. And I had no idea that I thought that meant, I had to be a rigid guy who didn't do anything fun, didn't enjoy life, and all these other things. I mean, I really did. And I recognize that that's the farthest thing from the truth, and so now obviously I know the difference. But that's when I started going, wait a minute, I'm going to quit living for Jeremy. And I'm going to quit being a victim, and I'm going to pray that God uses me in his kingdom for whatever he sees that I can do, whatever he sees fit. And so that led me to this journey here. I would have never chose horses. That wasn't a thing for me, but it's an opportunity that God put my wife in my life, who kind of guided me that way. And it's really been a great vessel to him. And everything that we do at Veterans Club is centered around Jesus. And going to Mighty Oaks and being a team leader there helps me in this position back home, and vice versa. So I feel fortunate and blessed that I get the opportunity to do both, because I'm just surrounded by God all the time and those who love him. And it just really makes this mission work. Without him, I could do none of it. So
That's awesome. It seems like a lot of guys who come, my exposure to, veterans a lot of times is through our programs, and a lot of guys who show up, men and women who show up, they would be like you. They have a perspective on Christianity, and maybe that changes over the course of the week. How do we better connect with people who are searching for truth? They need something, they know that, but maybe their perspective on God or a relationship with him or Christianity or the Bible is skewed. It's rooted in something they learned as a kid, but they don't authentically understand it. How do we help them adjust maybe their perspective and understand why those things are important to them?
What I've found out is the best way to transfer hope, in my opinion, is to live that lifestyle, to live it out, right? To not just go around and talk about God and sort of be so aggressive with it that it makes what some people look at Christianity, it verifies that, right? We don't want to do that. But what I do personally is I just live it out, and then I pray for those who are around me, and that they ask the question, "Hey, Jeremy, how do you find joy in these situations? Like, how are you still, despite this, and this, how are you still able to carry on?" And then that opens the door for the conversation. And that's what I do. And I just say, "Hey, listen, let me tell you why. You got to trust me, and let me be honest with you." And we just start talking about it. But when they see it happen, I think that's all the difference in the world.
Yeah. Yeah. It's the authenticity that lets them know it's real. It's not just an abstract concept their parents taught them as kids, right?
Right. Absolutely.
How important is the community aspect of getting together and spending time together? On your website, I think it talks about community and coffee, or conversation and coffee, or
camaraderie and coffee.
Coffee. I knew it was another C. Camaraderie and coffee. We talk about this sometimes with people like, what are these? We have outposts, Mighty Oaks Outposts. What does that mean? And what does that look like? And what's the curriculum? The curriculum sometimes just sitting down and talking and just being together. How important is that aspect to healing and moving forward?
Oh, it's super important. When we have these events, it's always low pressure. And in fact, when we have them, we just sit around, and people often ask, "Hey, what's the theme?" There is none. Like, we simply want to get together and connect with you, and however that works out. And we just kind of let, I pray before these events, and I just kind of let the Holy Spirit direct it and how he sees fit. I get out of my own way. I'm not perfect at that, but I try to do that as much as I can. And it just always leads to great conversation when we just don't put a lot of pressure on what we talk about. When we just allow people to voice whatever concern or issue or suggestion or thought that they have, it's amazing what can happen. We can start out talking about how good the coffee is. That's often how it starts, right? "Oh, it's just such a great cup of coffee."
Yeah.
But then it ends with, "I really want to change my life, and I really want to do something different, Jeremy, because this isn't working for me, and I don't know what that looks like." And then that's the opportunity where I can say, "Hey, I know a couple programs for you that could really change the dynamic of your life and really change your legacy." And we also focus on going forward. I don't spend so much time on their past,
right,
because nobody needs to be reminded of all their failures, right? I spend most of the time saying, "Hey, 5 minutes from now, your legacy can change. Let's focus on that. That's going to take a lot of work. We don't have time really to go backwards, so let's just focus on that and move forward."
Yeah, that's awesome. How does the equine therapy, that aspect of it, you talked about how it provides some healing and hope and, and those kind of things. From the outside looking in, I think a lot of people would ask the question, how? We even look at interaction with, service animals and those kind of things. And I'm asked the question all the time, how does this help anyone? What does that do for someone? How does that help someone?
Well, first and foremost, again, that connection's there, right? So veterans come out and they're surrounded by other veterans, and it's a very small group. We work with these horses. These horses are great vessels for conversation. It allows enough distraction to where folks aren't looking, eye to eye, talking about their worst times of their lives, right? Like, they're grooming the horses, and we put a couple veterans on each horse, one on each side, to start grooming the horse, and then this just leads to conversation. And then they become, not only are they getting accustomed to the horse, but they're getting accustomed to each other. And that's the goal. And when we go out and actually work the horses, because a lot of everything that we do is really hands-on. We teach some horsemanship as well. So when we go out and actually work the horses, these horses are prey animals, and they're very intuitive. And so they kind of mirror what we put out. And I always remind the guys, hey, why do you think it is that this horse don't want to work with you? I said, because it's not a poodle. We got to figure that out. We can't go pick it up, right? So we're going to have to figure out what we got to do inside of ourselves to get this horse to want to be a part of the herd, so to speak. And what that does is it forces them right there to be authentic, right? So they can't go hide in the basement. They can't avoid what's happening. We're out here. We got to get the horse to want to be a part of the program. And so they'll say, well, it'll start out with a simple conversation of, well, this is a big animal and I'm just a little intimidated. Okay, that's fine. We can talk about that. But usually by the end of the conversation, a couple things happen. Usually it ends up being something trauma related that we're in conversation about. And then the horses are a part of what we're talking about because they don't feel afraid anymore. You walk into a barn full of horses and you're anxious. They get anxious, right? Because they're always trying not to be eaten by us. That's their whole goal, right? Is to make sure they don't, and so what it does is it forces them to really talk about their program or talk about their issues and what they want to do about them. And we spend all day out there and just have, real good conversation. And I focus on peeling back the onion, like a blanket statement from veterans generally. And I was this guy was, I'm anxious, and that's just the way out, right? I call it a cop out. Yeah. We're sort of a polka vet situation. So I call it a cop out and I'm like, hey, listen, okay, we're all anxious. Everybody in America, I think, has some form of anxiety at some point in their lives. So let's get past that. What is it really? And then we could get all the way down to, well, we're on patrol in Baghdad and got hit and I lost my buddy and I just ain't never recovered. And so that's my portion of where I say, listen, I want you to tell this exact incident to your therapist when you go see your therapist, right? So we're like a support function for the VA and for other counseling services because I'm not a clinician. I use my experiences to get to the bottom of some of this stuff with the guys, but then I try to cut the red tape of walking into the therapy office for a year before you ever get down to business. And I encourage them to go and talk about this incident. Don't say anxiety. Don't say I'm mad or angry. Go and talk about this incident. And so it's really been beneficial. In fact, we have a really good relationship with the VA and they refer veterans to our program. And then if we're lucky enough, we get to talk about Jesus out there as well. And I know we pray several times out there in hopes that maybe that plants a seed because some of these folks never ever pray or they never get prayer. And so, and it does more often than not. I don't push that real hard. When it happens, I definitely take advantage of it.
I think it's really important. And just hearing you talk about this, I think it's really important for things like, equine therapy and some of the other support therapies and those kind of things to be managed by veterans, by people who understand where the folks who are attending are coming from. I talk to a lot of very well-meaning people, and I love civilians, and I love the support that civilians give. It's amazing. The work that Mighty Oaks is able to do, right. We're able to do because of civilians who get behind us and support us, and we're so very thankful for that. I think often people misunderstand the goal of things like equine therapy and other therapies, though, and it almost turns veterans into victims. Mm-hmm. They need to participate in this therapy because they're just not capable of doing anything else. And it's almost as though we forget the amazing things they've done.
Yeah.
Now we've relegated them to, this is the best they're going to do. They're going to brush a horse and that's the best they can ever do. And really that's not your goal when you talk about doing equine therapy or these other therapies.
No, not at all. In fact, we go through the horsemanship skill process, and it's very basic because we're not out there for that. We're out there for the conversation, the brotherhood, the opportunities to really talk about some hard stuff. And I tell them the second they show up, like when we have our briefing, we have a briefing before we get started. I just lay out the day for them. I say, listen, the horse stuff is cool, and I get it, but we're out here to work. You come all the way out here to this farm. I'm showing up at this farm. I'm showing up. I'm going to be transparent with you, and I need you to be transparent with me, but I need you to be ready to get well. I need you to be ready to put in the work. And it's going to be uncomfortable, and it's not going to feel good, and that's okay. but take one punch to the mouth instead of getting punched every day of your life. Let's just really start to get through that. And yeah, like I said, the horsemanship stuff is just a vessel for conversation, and they get to ride and learn a skill at the same time. But we follow up after. I think that's the key. Is that's only the beginning. That's just an opportunity, a safe place for us to get to know each other. But you'll see a couple veterans at the therapy, equine therapy, and then you'll see them we have an event called Bullets and Barbecue, where Mission Barbecue brings in food, and we're at the gun range, doing all kind of things. And so you just see that constant connection, and them exchanging numbers with each other, and really getting building those same strong bonds that we had in service. And that's the win for us as an organization. When I see a group of guys that have been through our program that do life together, that's our motto, is doing life together. When they're going out and they're living together and their families are getting connected, that's the real win for us.
Yeah, that's awesome. Again, we talk about this, and you're talking about this. All of these things are just tools that we can use to help people understand there's more to life than just looking back over your shoulder and feeling bad about what happened or where you are. There is something in front of you. A big part of that is paying it forward. That's exactly what you're doing. How important is it for a veteran who is hurting, who is struggling, and a lot of these things are very real, to understand, as you said, there's more to life than this. There's something bigger out there.
Yeah.
How important is it for them to then turn their attention to other people and begin, we use the phrase paying it forward, but really investing in the lives of other people?
That's, in my opinion and in my experience, that's where the real healing happens. It's whenever you, instead of, it's all about perspective. I mean, I think you have to change your whole perspective in order to heal. And the perspective that you have is, okay, this stuff happened to me, and it wasn't great. And we acknowledge that, but then let it be what it is right then. And then take those experiences and the lessons that you've learned through that, because it creates some of the most resilient people in the world. And why not use those skills and that toughness to go and help someone who isn't there yet? Our story, and I think that I saw a YouTube video of you talking about our story, and you're right. Like, our story is one of our most important assets, no matter what it is. And I try to tell these guys, don't be embarrassed or ashamed of your story. Go out and find somebody that's where you were, and show them that what they can be and where they can go, and start leading them. Start leading again. That's what leadership's big in the military. So start leading these men, and start talking about the great physician, and that's in Jesus Christ, and really focus on something that will not let you down, that will not fail you, that is the only real way to heal and get through it, and to overcome, and find something to do in His kingdom that will fulfill your heart in ways that nothing else will.
Yeah, that's awesome. I think it's such a waste to see those who have served in the military, who are relatively young, find themselves at a place where they've just given up. They've just quit. And really, because of the entitlement that we talked about earlier, they've decided they're just going to be consumers now. They're going to take every program and every thing that people that care about veterans are willing to give to them, and they'll just consume, and never give back. What a waste of a story. I mean, that's, redemption is using what's happened to you for a benefit, for good.
It is, and
it's so powerful.
And you can't grow from that location, right? We talk about at Mighty Oaks getting off the X, right? You got to get off the X. I mean, what happened has happened. We can't change the past. But what you can do is you can figure out a way to make it a positive situation. I mean, there's a lot of good lessons I learned from combat. I mean, contrary to popular belief, it wasn't all bad, and there was a lot of good things that come out of it. One is, people laugh at how to handle boredom, right? I mean, that's the other side of it nobody talks about, because that's not where you win medals, but that's a part of it. And so, but just that was a training ground. I try to tell these guys that was a training ground for you to become strong and a leader, and to be able to handle leadership in places that isn't comfortable. Nothing good ever happens in your comfort zone. Life is not about us. Life is not about our experiences. It's about God and what He does and what He wants for us. And it's way bigger. We can't even figure it out, right? We can't even fathom what really He has in store for us. But to really start reading. We read all these self-help books, right? And everybody leaves the Bible out. It just blows my mind. I'm like, you're reading these books, and yeah, some of them are great, and I love reading books, but in reality, if you're not reading the main book, the book of truth that's not written, and then if you don't do that, then none of the others are going to help you. You got to have a foundation, and we talk about what that foundation is, and the classes that we teach at Mighty Oaks. I've taught some of those in the county jail here to incarcerated veterans to kind of give them hope, and the guards talk about, hey, Jeremy, people come in here all the time with information and nothing really sticks, but we have guys in here that's having 15-man prayer circles. They're doing Bible studies, and it's just really cool. And it makes their job easier. And they're like, I don't know what it is. And I'm like, I'm telling you, because that is the truth. That is the light. That's why that will always be successful, And so it's just real cool to be a part of that and witness how God moves in that way. I'm just so thankful for the opportunities.
That's really cool. So great phrase. You need to put it on a T-shirt. Nothing good happens in your comfort zone. That's pretty solid. I might steal that one and tell people I came up with it. Man, that's great. I like to ask this question a lot with folks that interact with people who are hopeless. You got someone sitting across from you. You have a veteran that shows up maybe to one of your meetings or one of your opportunities to serve them, and they're without hope. Somehow they end up in front of you though, and man, they don't know what to do. Maybe they talked about taking their life or walking away from a relationship. For you personally, where does hope come from? But beyond that, what do you say to that person? How do you give them hope? Because without hope, they're not going forward. How do you give them hope? What do you say to them?
So I often ask, what is it that your heart desires? What would you want if you could choose your purpose and go out and live your passion? What would that look like? And you get a bunch of different answers. Some of it I would still be serving, or I would still be with my guys in Iraq or Afghanistan, or I'd be leading again. And whatever answer they give me, I say, do that. Yep. Do that. Like, find out what fulfills you and go and make it happen. Because you got to get out of the hopeless boat. Like, you have to get out of I'm never going to do this, because the VA told me the same thing. Jeremy, you'll never be able to do the things that you were able to do. You'll never. And I just got tired of hearing that never. Right. And I'm like, use that pride that we learned in the military and go out and make something happen. And we just focus, and it's more than one conversation. Right. But it's at that point, generally I come alongside and we meet up once a week and really start talking about what that looks like. I have them pray about it if they pray. If not, we pray anyway, right? Because we're gonna make sure that the King is involved. And so, we just have conversations, and I just ask them, find out what you want to do. And if they say, well, I'd love to serve. Well, this would have been my 20th year in the Army. I'd been retiring next month, actually, or I guess this month. But I said, you can still serve. Once you come alongside of us at Veterans Club, I got something that you can do, because that's the other part of it. We believe in empowering veterans to have that purpose, right? We understand that suicide often comes from the lack of purpose when you get, retired, or you have to get out of the military, or whatever that is that your identity is in the beginning. And so we got a lot of things going on. So we're able to give them a lot of different jobs to do that they fulfill that purpose. But maybe it's volunteering for us. Maybe it's learning more about horsemanship. Maybe I say, hey, go to Mighty Oaks. I have a guy coming with me next month to Ohio. We just try to figure out what it is that makes their heart thump, and we do that.
Do you ever have, and I think you probably do, just like we do, but do you ever have families reach out to you and ask what they can do with the veteran that is in their life, a husband, a son, maybe a daughter who's struggling, and they ask you for advice? What can I do to help them? What do you tell the families that are dealing with that?
I tell them the first thing is to just listen. Just listen, but also let them know about our programs. Have them come out and see, that's the other part of what we do. We do a lot of family oriented programs for that reason. For example, we have monthly cookouts and barbecues and things, because we understand that the veteran can get all the help they want. But the family needs to be involved in that process. They need to understand what it looks like and what to look for to find red flags and things like that. So, and it gives them opportunity to hook up with other spouses and kids hook up with other children, so that they have that same support system. But, I tell them, to send them to us so that we can, figure out what it is that they're going through. If it's something that we can't do as an organization, then we have other resources that we can help with. And that's essentially how we do that.
Yeah. Yeah. Family support is such a big deal.
It's critical.
Often we forget about the family and kind of leave them behind.
Well, the reason why I know that is and I know you do a lot of final challenges during the graduations, and one of the greatest ones that I've heard you talk about is don't expect folks to welcome you with welcoming arms after you've been here. And I know you're fired up, right? And I tell my team, say, listen, I know you're fired up about marriage right now, and you're going to go home and you're going to want to talk about how different you're going to be. And I just say, don't say anything. Just live it out. Right. Let them ask the questions, because there's some pain. There's some maybe years of pain that maybe you've said this 100 times. And I don't want you to become discouraged because you're not getting the result or the response that you think you should, when in reality you have a lot of damage control to work on. And so just go home and live it out. And eventually the question will be asked, like, wow, something's different about you.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. It's amazing to me that, folks will spend 10 years destroying every relationship in their life.
Right.
They're going to go fix it like Saturday when they get home. Like, it's going to be better. And 3 days later, why don't they believe me? Because you've been lying to them for 10 years, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. And then they get discouraged and want to quit. And then we got to, do this whole balance.
Yeah, that's right. Oh man, that's awesome. What's next for Veterans Club and what you guys are doing?
So we have a really cool project that I'm proud of that's in the works right now. We're gonna develop Louisville, I think maybe Kentucky as a state. It's first veteran tiny home community for homeless veterans. Yeah, so we're excited about that. We're gonna have a year-long program where veterans can come, and we're gonna have a bunch of different partners come in and where they can focus solely on healing and recovery, and not so much where they're going to eat and where they're going to sleep, but just really be loved on first and foremost. It's going to be a faith-based situation, so they're going to get a lot of Jesus in that, but they're going to get a lot of other therapy and things of that nature. And we're really just going to try to equip them to go out after a year if they're ready. If they're not ready, we just however long it takes, but have equip them to go out and live a life that they can be proud of and sustain themselves and get their families back. I mean, that's what we're looking forward to. We're hoping to break ground on that really soon. So
that's awesome. Where can people follow you guys or find out more about you and really keep in touch with what you guys are up to?
So obviously we're on just about every social media platform. On Facebook, we're on Veterans Club. I will say that we do have a private Facebook group for veterans only. It's called Veterans Club Kentucky. There's 2,400 veterans on there. That's the platform we use to support each other in between events, because we know that that's important, right? And so I highly recommend, if you're a veteran, to go to join that one. Instagram is Veterans Club Kentucky, and Twitter is Veterans Club as well, although I haven't figured out Twitter yet, so bear with us.
No one has. No one uses that thing.
Yeah. We have a website, veteransclubky.com, that you can go to as well. So there's plenty of ways to reach out and get a hold of us.
That's awesome. Jeremy, thank you so much, man. I
Absolutely.
appreciate it.
Thank you.
And appreciate all you guys are doing.
Thanks. Appreciate that.
All right. Always thankful for the opportunity to have interviews like the one we just did with Jeremy. And one of the reasons I love these interviews is because there are so many people, veterans, of course, people who are serving in the military, but every other walk of life, there are so many people who get stuck. And Jeremy talked about that. You heard the interview, but he did what he did in the military, long deployment, came home, struggling with a bunch of stuff, thought that he could just deal with it, eventually lost his job. And what's crazy to me about that story is that he said that his boss came to him, who served in the military, told him there were some problems, told him he needed to get help, eventually had to let him go, and it was 5 years before he would get any help. And man, it's so crazy to me the amount of time that will lapse between when we realize there's a problem and when we're willing to get help for a problem. But frankly, there are a lot of people in life who never get help. They get stuck and they never move on. I will sometimes tell a story about one of the things that happened to me while I was in Iraq. And I'll use the phrase, sometimes the unexpected events of life are so overwhelming that people become the lifelong victims of a one-time event. The lifelong victims of a one-time event. If you want to, you can write that down because that was really good. All right, lifelong victims of a one-time event. And it's so true. And I've talked to so many people that are living right there. They're breathing, they're going to work, they're doing their thing, but inside they're just destroyed. They're frustrated, they're angry, they're dealing with so much stuff that spills out onto the people around them. They don't even realize that other people are dealing with it. But it's true. They're dealing with it. They have become a lifelong victim of a one-time event. And Jeremy talked about how he came to that point where he realized the people in his life were too important to continue living this way. And then he talked about something that really I just want to drill down on for just a minute before we're out today. And that is this idea of purpose and paying it forward. Living on purpose, having a purpose, understanding what it is that you are moving toward. There has to be a goal off in the distance. There has to be a target that you're trying to hit. And again, this is not just for people that have dealt with trauma or are dealing with trauma, people who have served in the military or they're maybe in law enforcement or in the fire community. This is for all people everywhere. We have to live on purpose. And I'll say this does not simply apply to people in kind of the nonprofit or maybe the more soft skills kind of world. This is all of us. You may be a business person, or you may be a full-time parent, or you may have some other role in your life. Whatever it is that you do, you have to have a purpose. And what is purpose? It has to be defined by you. But really, the thing that moves us forward is understanding that we exist on this planet to accomplish something important. Now, I would submit, coming from a Christian worldview, that your purpose needs to be wrapped up in or framed in a relationship with God. God created us, and as the creator, he gives us purpose. Our ultimate purpose is to do those things that would please him. The Bible might use the phrase to glorify him. That just means that we're living in a way that will please him. But whatever it is that we do, those other things should fit within that purpose. We're helping people, we're serving people, we're building things and creating things and involved in things that actually matter. I've known so many people that get stuck. And when we get stuck, we lose our purpose because we're so tied to the past that our purpose was back there and we have nothing in front of us. We have to move forward intentionally. There has to be purpose and there has to be direction. That's where this idea of paying it forward comes from. This phrase, we know this phrase, right? Paying it forward. Maybe you're in the drive-through line of McDonald's, because I spend a considerable amount of time in the drive-through line of McDonald's. And don't make comments about that or send me messages. I know it's not good for you, but I still enjoy it. And you're getting something in the drive-through line, right? And there's someone behind you, and you say something like this: "I'm going to pay it forward. I'm going to pay for the meal of the people behind me." And I heard a story recently about a McDonald's. I can't remember where it was, where that happened, and that went on for over 100 customers. People continue to pay it forward for the people behind them. That's awesome. But more important than paying it forward for the nutritious and nutritionally deficient meal of someone else, pay it forward in the lives of others in a meaningful way. We've been through things, we've experienced things. Again, Jeremy talked about this. It's taking the experiences of our own lives and understanding that we can either hang on to those and kind of die with those experiences, or we can leverage those for the benefit of others. What is paying it forward in a meaningful way? Paying it forward in a meaningful way is understanding that I have the experiences of my life, good, bad, or otherwise. And regardless of which category those fall into, I'm going to leverage those for the benefit of others. And man, we get so self-focused. Again, Jeremy used the word entitled. We feel like because we've been through something or we've experienced something or something's happened to us because of what's gone on in our lives, we're now entitled to feel bad or to treat other people poorly. Or to kind of wallow in self-pity because of what has happened to us. We become victims of an event that happened back there for the rest of our lives. Paying it forward says, I'm going to look at what's happened in my life, and I'm going to figure out how I can leverage that for the benefit of others. If something good has happened in my life, I'm going to use the blessings, the benefits to me personally of those good things that have happened to be a benefit or a blessing to others. I'm going to help people get a hand up when they need a hand up and maybe resource them so they can go forward. Man, that's living on purpose. I'm not now just working a job or taking resources in for my own benefit. I'm doing it on purpose. You've heard the stories of people who are people of great wealth and great influence, and yet they find themselves hopeless and despondent. How does that happen? What happens when you think that you're taking all of these things in for your benefit, when really what you need to do is understand the concept of paying it forward, or understand what it is to live a purposeful life. I'm accumulating stuff so that I can be a benefit to others. In so many ways, Mighty Oaks exists because of people just like that. How are we able to do what we do? We are able, this year, we'll have nearly 800 folks come through one of our week-long programs. We'll speak to thousands of people, active duty folks, veterans, first responders, thousands of people on the topics of resiliency and moving forward in their own lives. We're able to do that across the country. Why? Because people who have stuff, they have some resources, some a lot and some not so much, but they have resources. They're understanding how to use those resources for the benefit of others. It's people like you that get this, that make what we do possible, even the show. We're able to do these things because people are using what they have for the benefit and the blessing of others. But there are a lot of people who don't have, the blessings of life, and they're dealing with the traumas of life and the struggles of life and the difficulties of life. How do you use those for the benefit of others? The exact same way. As a parent, I don't want my kids to have to learn all of the hard lessons that I've learned on their own. If I can spare them some of the difficulties or some of the potholes on the road of life, if you will, if I can spare them, I want to do that. And when you've been through something hard, a trauma in your life, a trial in your life, a difficulty in your life, and you're able to take those lessons and then help others get a hold of those lessons or learn the truths. You culled the truth out of that. You've taken the lessons that need to be learned and you're communicating that to others. Man, you're paying it forward in such a meaningful way. Now, your life, your brokenness, your hurt, your trauma, your bad decisions, all that junk that's in the past, it has purpose and it has value. It's like you found a piece of gold and you've cleaned all the dirt off of it, and now you can see the gold underneath because you figured out how to use that to help others move forward in their own lives. I'll tell you, through the work of Mighty Oaks, I've seen this happen thousands of times. Hurting, broken people who have found purpose and hope in their own life share their stories of pain and brokenness with other people who are experiencing right now pain and brokenness. And they share that story, but then they share what it looks like to move beyond that pain and brokenness. And in all of it, hope is found and direction is given and purpose is renewed. That's how it's done. I hear the stories of people like Jeremy and so many other people. And again, if you've listened to this show or watched this show in the past, you've heard other stories just like this. But what's the big takeaway or the big lesson for you, the person who's listening or watching? Maybe you're a veteran, maybe you're serving right now, maybe you're neither of those things. You're just interested in what we talk about. What's the big takeaway? What's the big lesson? Here it is. Whatever you do in your life and whatever you've been through in your life, use it for the benefit of others. Live on purpose, and that purpose will carry you forward. Man, what a great truth. And so thankful that Jeremy would take the time to share with us today and man, talk about the work that he's doing. There are so many people doing such great work, and we don't even know about it. I mean, Kentucky. How many people, raise your hand at home, if you can point to Kentucky on a map? I think most of us, maybe not. I don't know. Maybe we could. But in Kentucky, he's doing good work. In states all across the country, people are just doing good work and doing stuff. They're paying it forward. They're living on purpose, and they're receiving a blessing as they're blessing others. And I hope that you'll do the same. Thankful for Jeremy for being on our show, Jeremy Harrell, and the good work that they're doing with the Veterans Club. Check them out, and you'll be blessed as you do. If you're watching on YouTube and you have not yet subscribed, subscribe. A lot of content comes onto here, not just our show, but a lot of stuff we put on here. And I would love for you to participate in that. Hit the notification bell. That lets you know when new content comes online, and that would be great for you to keep track of that. The show, of course, comes on every Friday morning at 10 Pacific time, but we've got a lot of stuff going on around that. If you're listening on Mojo or listening on the podcast or some other place, go ahead, make your way over to YouTube and check that out as well. We're thankful for our partners. We've got so many great folks partnering with us. We're thankful for them. But I'd encourage you to step over to YouTube as well and check that out. Thanks for being with us. Look forward to spending this time with you next time we're together.